Another area of digital money, we have Stewart Roberts from iZettle.
Thank you, Eddie. Just make a couple of comments before we start off. Firstly, Eddie said that we had 3 interesting presentations for you, but that wasn't in my brief, so I apologise in advance. Secondly, the racket outside, I don't know if anyone, well, you guys heard it at the beginning. That's what happens when you leave a load of free alcohol out. We come in here and the students are still outside. Okay? And thirdly, a question, I think it's a rollover for the lottery tomorrow night. So a lot of you guys and ladies in here are entrepreneurs or involved in FiTech or perhaps academics in the space. So I want you to have a think about, in a period of 3 years, how many new companies start up globally that within that 3 years get to a turnover of $1 billion? It's probably 2, actually, that's the stats at the moment, to $1 billion in that time. If you bring that down to $100 million, now you're looking at 100,000 companies plus. So if you spent £3 on the lottery, your chances of winning are 1 in 5 million. The beauty with the lottery is your only chance of loss is £3. If you go out and start up a company, your chance of loss is a lot more than £3, believe me. So if you're entering into this space brand new and you think that you're good at finance, check out the lottery first before you start punting every pound you've got into this new business that you're going to do. So that's the starting point. Let's just see what iZettle is, and then we'll go on from there.
Cell phones have always been a big thing, and as they got smaller, they became even bigger. We talk, we play, we work, we read. And now we can even accept credit card payments, thanks to iZettle. Let's say you want to sell your watch, or your car, or a pair of sunglasses. Just connect the chip card reader to your smartphone or tablet, and the application automatically launches. Now enter the amount and a brief description of the purchase. Insert the buyer's credit card, then press pay. The phone securely contacts the bank and authorizes the payment. Take out the card and have the buyer sign to confirm. They can add their email if they want to send themselves a receipt. And even share this with friends on Facebook to let them know what they bought and where they bought it. iZettle. Payments made easy.
Got it? It's not too complex. It's one of the beauties of it, I think, as an innovation, if I call it that. It's certainly an innovation rather than an invention. It is, in my own terms, it is bridging analog and digital in the form of payment acceptance. So it hasn't jumped straight to this wholly brand new ecosystem of mobile payments in all devices and in all environments. It's bridging the analog, which in my terms is 962 million of those in Europe, and it's linking them up with a mobile phone, which is pretty prevalent in Europe already today and of course elsewhere in the world. Now the difference is with this solution versus other solutions is generally around who it's targeting. So John and I, or from my side, had the pleasure of working with John for some while over at Barclaycard. These customers that iZettle are targeting are customers that have never been able to accept card payments just because they're too small. Just because the prices they have to pay are too high, the businesses are too seasonal, they can't meet the commercial demands of the big banks. And it's not because the big banks don't want these customers, they just can't scale down to offer a service that is economic at that level. That's what we're trying to do. Some other players in the marketplace are doing it. Just make it simple. Just make it simple. So what we're looking at doing is working with very small businesses to allow them to accept payment cards on the move, wherever they may be, trusting there's a signal. It doesn't work offline, it doesn't work if your phone's run out of battery. But what it does do is it allows you to take cards when cards are what you need to take. Picture a small customer such as a plumber, as an electrician, maybe a mobile hairdresser, maybe someone in a market, someone at a food exhibition, craft fair. They probably love cash. They still love cash. They'll love cash in 20 years' time for a number of reasons, most of which you can guess. But if there's a chance for them to make a bigger sale by accepting a card payment, that's a good option for them. That's what the solution offers them. It also offers them a solution for tablets if they're in a more static environment. So we have cafe providers, coffee, food. We have shops that are running, for example, seasonal sales. You'll start seeing some of the high streets filling up now when they've been empty with seasonal sales of calendars and some pound stores and gift stores where they only trade for 6 weeks of the year. If they take a traditional solution, they'll pay for a single terminal, 20 to 30 pounds per terminal per month. There's no seasonality on it. So we can offer administrative services around this as well. Again, not rocket science. Being able to have a catalogue of product is not rocket science. It's just finding a need and satisfying a gap in the market. And I think that for me coming here, thanks to Eddie, to have the opportunity to speak to you, for me I think it's really important if you're going to step out into this space to not always jump full ahead and say you're going to be the CEO of the billion-dollar company in 3 years' time. If one of you is, then please remember my card and remember my advice. Come back and find me when you got the money. But otherwise, you're going to be the people that maybe the lottery was a better bet. But if you can find something which is an evolution of what exists and deliver it in a way that your customers want it, in a way that they cannot otherwise be satisfied, you'd probably be happy with a £100 million or $100 million company in 3 years' time. So these are the straightforward economics. Point of sales in Europe, penetration for every place that you can buy something, about 2%. The UK is slightly more heavily penetrated than other parts of Europe for this. And as John said, there are, on contactless terminals, for example, from a marketplace, there are 6 figures and it's growing. In the UK, total number of terminals, about 2.6 million terminals across about 1 million merchants. For us, we launched in Sweden in September of last year. Sweden has 250,000 terminals in the marketplace. Since September, we've put an extra 60,000 terminals into Sweden. We also launched in Germany 2 weeks ago. So thousands of customers now in Germany. We launched in the UK last Wednesday. Thousands of live customers in the UK since last Wednesday. We launched in Denmark, Finland and Norway this morning, by the way. So this is the key for us, is that this space at the bottom, we called it prosumer, is a space that's not been readily satisfied by other parts of the industry. So we're not fighting up here. It'd be a bit of fun, but it'd be a bloodbath for many, and we'd probably be the injured party at the end of the day. But down here, it's a greenfield site. That's another great trigger to consider if you're looking at going into the digital money space. Greenfield site, but don't work in a greenfield site if you don't know that it will take the foundations of your business. If it's built on a bog, if it's built on quicksand, you'll disappear into the ground. No one will know anything more of you in the end. So here's the target merchants. Sole traders, mobile merchants, people only with cash or cheque in the past. Of course, cheque is now really a dead currency in the UK if you don't know the person you're taking it from. And for those that are interested in things like fraud, and it sounded later on, John, that there are a couple of people in the audience like that. Current fraud levels over 65,000 customers since September last year are currently running at half of standard chip and PIN fraud for Europe. So 0.006%. So apologies if it's not particularly interesting. Let's see if you guys can make it interesting if you've got some questions. James.
Yeah, you were
showing this with an iPhone and an iPad, does it work with, say, a Samsung or another
Yep.
smartphone?
Samsung
And
Galaxies.
what are the connections?
What do you mean the connection, sorry?
Like, how do you connect to your phone? What does it need to connect?
Okay, yeah, there's an audio jack on one of the readers and there's an Apple 30-pin connector on the other reader. So the audio jack works pretty much broadly across all Androids running on various Gingerbread or above 2.2 software for Android. Interestingly, it doesn't work on Sony Xperia at the moment, but that's something that we've got to work out with them. But Android and Apple, the audio jack version also works on mini iPad and on iPhone 5. Okay.
Thanks for coming to the UK. Are you going to provide more software services to these new merchants, or are you going to rely and open up an API for developers to help build out those services with your reader?
I think the answer is both, but the API is open. It's available. We've got people building to it right now. Again, another rule, just as a background to iZettle, when I joined the company at the beginning of the year, we had 35 staff. Not a single member of that staff had come from the payments industry anywhere, including the founders, and I was the first and only for some while to come from the industry. We only make money on a transaction. Why supply anything else? We actually supply administrative services, but that's why we opened the API, because for things such as stock control, point of sale, pure solution, financial accounting, management, tracking, and so on, there are better businesses out there at doing it than us.
The iZettle mainly looks for the prosumer part of the market, but you also showed a iPad POS with iZettle plugged into the side of it, perhaps more targeted at SMEs within retail, for example. Those guys typically pay maybe 1.5% versus the 2.7% on iZettle. Are there any plans to have a tiered pricing structure that maybe allows those guys to move over to iZettle without taking such punitive pricing?
There are plans at certain levels. Let's put it like that. More plans around bundling. So without it being overtly secret, the price packaging for this will evolve into a number of varieties, which will include what you might perceive to be similar plans as you get with a mobile phone these days. So if you're prepared to commit and prepay, then you'll benefit from a better rate or a better number of minutes in your package, if you like. That's got to evolve market by market. So there are already examples in Sweden, which has a longer track record than I do for the UK market. As far as volume is concerned, the other key thing on this, which I probably missed, is the application process and getting a merchant account. So if you want to go to an archetypal service today and get 1.3% or whatever it may be, then you've got a fairly good business to sustain and justify that, and you're going to go through a fair amount of rigor to get that. If you download our app and you don't lie on the application, you can download the app, go live, and take a transaction in less than 4 minutes back. So we supply the whole of that back-end service. The larger the client is, the less likely they are willing to give us that control. So it's probably going to self-level at a certain point. Yeah.
I'd say your thing looks very similar to Square, the American company. Are you basically a Europeanized version of Square?
Not far off, I'd say. I mean, there's a key difference, and one of the core differences, I think, that when we heard a comment about NFC earlier on, one of the data thefts in the US around an NFC card was actually the mag stripe data, and that's the prevalent capability in the US today, which is magnetic stripe cards. That is the capability that Square have got. And taking a transaction with a stripe off a magnetic card is a very different technical proposition to dipping a chip with an EMV compliant reader. So the reader that we have was and still is the first and only EMV compliant chip only reader in the marketplace.
Really interesting product, actually. I was wondering how you market to SMEs and sole proprietors at the volume you do.
It's a toughie. Retail is one. So we launched on Wednesday. We launched a relationship with Everything Everywhere, or EE, as I'm supposed to say. It sounds like I'm laughing every time I say it. So you can walk into the high street stores, everything everywhere, the Orange and T-Mobile brands, and buy it off the shelf. Other channels, obviously the web channel, social marketing. So we punch above our weight on social networks already. Seriously, interesting space for me. Not, from my background, it wasn't a space I've ever played in. And we've got some great people in the team that make this happen. But generally, networks around hubs of data. So whether it be a chamber of commerce, whether it be a tourist authority, whether it be, let me think of an institute of chartered plumbing and heating engineers, or whether it be the London Taxi Drivers Association. Those are the core points to distribute the message, because it's too expensive to sell one-on-one to each customer. Is that what you thought?
Yeah. Who does your merchant acquiring for you?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay. Then I'll add another question. How do you get around the merchant aggregation rules that the banks apply? Because other companies aren't allowed to aggregate, and that determines how fast you can sign up a new client.
If you are a certified and registered payment facilitator is the new terminology, then that is the terminology in the face-to-face world. A PSP payment facilitator covers the e-commerce world. So there are now engines and vehicles, both with MasterCard and with Visa, that allow that. But we are registered as a bank, we're registered as an electronic money license holder, we're registered with the FSA, and we are monitored by the FSA. Okay.
One more question. I know there's a few others, but we won't know.
Yeah, I wanted to understand about working offline, because my understanding is that the iZettle product is really just a gateway, and the actual, what is effectively the chip and pin machine, is on a server. So if you don't have a live connection, then you can't use it. Is that correct?
The final point was correct. The other point's perhaps a little bit wrong. So if you don't have a live connection, you can't take a transaction. Core reason being, it's not where our chip and pin resides. We have, if you know EMV has two kernels. It has level 1 and level 2. Level 1 sits on our device, level 2 sits in our servers. The two together create a complete EMV line. We need to link to the issuer, ultimately, to get a real-time authorization. So if there's no network, that's not going to happen. Right. So all transactions are authorized real-time.
Anybody want another question?
No.
Is it network independent? Vodafone, Orange?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.